Yeah, thank you, Dr. Neha, and excellent presentation, I must say. And I think that landmark article in 2014 did a lot of good to people who are involved in retinal imaging. I think a standardization in terminology was the need of our, because there were so many publications coming out, and people had no idea that how to build a consensus. And Because unlike radiology, our imaging has still not a very robust committee for accepting these terminologies. But I think it's an excellent idea to discuss it in this instruction course, and I thank scientific committee AIUS and especially you for actually you I think you envisage it long back, 2 3 years back, that we should do a proper conference on this, a meeting. And again, once again, that's a very good idea. So I got this opportunity to learn and read more about lamellar hole associated epiretinal proliferation, and this is a very important OCT finding for everybody who is involved in medical as well as surgical retina, and described for first time in 2014 by Spade and Bang. It was initially described like was in cases with lamellar macular hole, and the features which they described was that you will find an irregular foveal contour. There will be an inner retinal defect. There also would be a dehiscence of inner retina. Just give me a second. Yeah, from outer retina, and there will be an absence of full thickness defect like you see in full thickness macular hole. So that means your photoreceptor layers would be intact. Before we move on to in further details, meanwhile, we also were seeing a lot of lamellar macular hole cases, and this is one such case where we were following this lady, and she was maintaining 6/9 vision till October 2016 when she had a drop in this vision in the left eye, and we operated with a fovea sparing, ILM peel, and you can see the ILM flap, and luckily we didn't land up into a full thickness macular hole, and you can see foveal contour nicely restored after the surgery. On the other hand, very recently, in 2019, again we got this case with lamellar macular hole, and he was posted for surgery, and he had a different looking epiretinal membrane, and we operated and we landed up into a full thickness macular hole. So I'll talk about this case later, but I think going back to our history of analyzing OCTs of epiretinal membranes in much more detail. So it was way back in 2006 when Witkin et al. Have noticed that there are some ERMs which are different on high resolution OCT. And then in 2011, I think Barbara did a great job when she actually differentiated these two different membranes on OCT, and she said there is one group which has dense membranes and the another group which has normal membranes, tractional membranes. But it was again in 2014, Bang and Spade. I'll talk about this article in more detail. And then I think this group, Govito, along with David Saraf, they did a wonderful job in not only describing it further as degenerative and tractional lamellar macular holes, they've also given a very nice classification of ERMs based on how much invasion of fovea occurs by surrounding inner retinal layers. So I'll talk about it later. So this was the landmark Barbara's article, and where she actually not only peeled these membranes, analyzed their OCT, she also analyzed these membranes histopathologically. And what was reported was that there are two different membranes on your left side. That is, the A photograph shows the tractional membrane, which is highly reflective, and on the right side there is a dense membrane which was visible as a yellow tissue on intraoperatively, and it was more smooth looking membrane with medium reflectivity. And she also reported that folding and wrinkles is very less with these dense membranes. But then I think Bang and Spade explored this thing further, and they reported that calling them thick or dense membrane is not good enough. We need to give them a different name. And that's how they described this lamellar hole associated epiretinal proliferation. So they said that it's a variety of epiretinal membrane, but here what you see is a homogeneous collection of medium reflectivity. Now, as Dr. Neha was nicely telling us about that, how when we are reading OCT scans, we are describing things, as they reflect the laser light. And reference for this reflectivity is within the scan itself. So vitreous has the lowest reflectivity and RPE has the highest reflectivity. So if you see LHEP, which will be seen on retinal surface, has medium reflectivity, which will match the reflectivity of middle retinal layers. So inner plexiform and uh, inner nuclear layers. So it will resemble something in between that. Another feature what they described was that it will have a variable thickness. At some portions it will be thick and other portions it will be thinner. And you will see it across all the layers. It will be spanning the base of the hole also. So, and all wherever it's going, you will see the same medium reflectivity. So that is a very characteristic feature of LHEP. And initially they described it with lamellar macular holes only, but there were then more groups who have seen that this can be seen with full thickness macular holes also. But they also highlighted that why this is a distinct entity. The one interesting observation they made was that it will always be seen whenever there are inner retinal defects and there is dehiscence of inner retina from outer retina. So this was a very striking thing they noted, and they also found that it's very difficult to see it clinically on fundus picture on your 90D examination. And the foldings and wrinkles associated with classical epiretinal membrane are very less commonly seen with LHEP. And on this analysis of the collagen, after removing these membranes, have also shown different components. I'll not go into the molecular details, but histopathologically and imaging wise, they could see that this membrane is different from our regular membrane. Of course, on NFAS also, you can see the difference. LHEP doesn't have that wrinkles and folds. It's more of a smooth kind of a membrane, unlike your regular ERM. And of course, I think most of the things when we try to find the origin end up at Muller cells. So current understanding is that Muller cells and the other glial cells contribute to this LHEP. Now, coming back to our own case, when I went back and analyzed the whole thing in retrospective, I saw that this was LHEP was of variable thickness, and it was spanning the base of the lamellar macular hole. You can see the two important characteristics nicely visible in this case. I'll talk about it, what went wrong in our case, but another group who accepted this classification and this terminology LHEP, they operated 43 eyes with lamellar macular hole, out of which 19 eyes had LHEP. But they modified their surgical technique. They did a foveal sparing ILM peeling for them and did not avulse this membrane from the base. And interestingly, their rate of macular hole, post-surgery macular hole formation was remarkably low. And they also added more to the information added by Spade et al. So one thing they noted was that if you look carefully, then you can actually see the yellow material corresponding with LHEP on your color photograph also. So exactly what Dr. Neha was highlighting, that eyes will see only when brain knows what to see. Second, this modified peeling technique may be a good idea if you plan to operate a patient with LHEP. And in their series, chances of restoring photoreceptor lines were after surgery was much higher in eyes with LHEP. So this was again an interesting observation. And they also found that folds in retina can be seen in eyes with LHEP also. So it's not an exclusive thing for other variety of ERM. You can have a mix and match. And they also found LHEP in full thickness macular hole. So according to them, implication of LHEP could be, one is that there can be a high incidence of post of full thickness macular hole formation. So modify your peeling approach. They even suggested that if it's a reparative process, and if you see a small full thickness hole with LHEP, you can actually observe it. It might facilitate spontaneous closure. So in our case, I think coming back, actually, because we knew that this patient had LHEP, our plan was to spare the fovea, and we were planning foveal sparing ERM and ILM peeling. Unfortunately, when we were, and you can see I was not avulsing this LHEP, but at the time when I was trying to aspirate the excess dye, I think I ended up sucking the flap, the ERM flap, and that probably led to avulsion. And even when I did a inverted flap for this case, as you have seen, we landed up into post-op macular hole. Now another, I think there is a case report where again they have done same thing. They have actually not avulsed this LHEP and they have just used it as a flap, and they had a very nice closure after surgery, no macular hole, and you see restoration of almost all the lines. So I think there is another group which has studied full thickness macular hole, and so they also found that these can be associated with lamellar hole associated proliferation. So coming to the next topic, the ectopic inner foveal layer. So that was all about LHEP, but this was again our own cases. When we go back and look, this was operated long back, and we could see even at 6-year follow-up, despite good visual recovery, there is no foveal pit. And all of us have seen these cases. When you operate, even when you remove ILM, this foveal pit doesn't come back. Another patient, same. So I'll quickly rush through the cases. But this was a gentleman in the group.
You can take your time. We have a lot of excess time from my talk also. Please, you can take your time.
Fine, I think fine.
Yes, Dr. Dipendra, please take your time.
Okay.
We have excess
Thank
time.
you. So I think this was a group Govito. I think this is again a very landmark article, and I'm sure this must be cited again and again. We are seeing more and more reports citing it. And he actually analyzed these OCTs in further detail, and we all were seeing epiretinal membranes, and people were trying to find what can be the prognostic indicator for OCT based prognostic indicator for these ERMs. So I think he first and his group actually tried to classify these cases, and how he classified was that in stage 1, when you see a simple epiretinal membrane, but everything else is fine. So they categorize as stage 1, that where you can see a foveal pit and all the layers are at their place. There is no increase in thickness of retina. Outer nuclear layer is also same. Unlike this, in stage 2, they describe that you lose your foveal pit. So the pit is lost, and there is elongation of foveal cones. Outer nuclear layer gets elongated, but the other foveola is still devoid of any of the layers which are not there normally. And in stage 3, you have all what you have in stage 2, but apart from that, there is invasion of inner nuclear and inner plexiform layers in the foveolar area. Now this is again very important, that before you label any epiretinal membrane as stage 3, you have to do 360-degree scans, and you make sure you are scanning the center of the macula. It's not an eccentric scan. This is what they also highlighted. But in stage 3, you can still make out all the layers. There is no disorganization. When there is disorganization and you lose the you can't identify these inner retinal layers, then you label it stage 4. So this, I think, classification was initially proposed, but I think now a lot of studies have found it very useful, and it's a very reproducible classification which they proposed. Not only this, out of lot of parameters, except for this, the integrity of photoreceptor lines, I think presence and thickness of ectopic inner foveal layer has a very important bearing on prognosis after surgery. I think all other OCT based features have very little impact on visual recovery after ERM surgery. So again, EIFL is a very landmark finding in epiretinal membrane, and this is something which I was discussing, that before we diagnose or stage these membranes, I think we have to ensure that our findings are seen 360-degree in all the scans. And best way to look for EIFL is do a densely packed raster scan over the fovea, so that know what is happening at the center. And sometimes the conditions, congenital conditions like foveal plana and foveal hypoplasia, they can also mimic EIFL. So of course you will scan the fellow eye and see if most of these conditions, the congenital ones are bilateral, and so you can rule out. Another important thing they highlighted is the progression is even more diagnostic, which is probably true for most OCT findings. That if you see them progressing, then it virtually rules out congenital anomaly. And even in their series, they have seen that these cases progress from stage 1 to stage 2. So this is again, I think, a very useful learning from their series, that this staging is not only a one-time analysis, it's actually a serial analysis, and the cases can progress from stage 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and same thing happens after surgery. You operate a stage 4 case, you can convert it into 3 or 2, and these patients get a visual benefit. So I think to conclude, I think I have already told this, that EIFL itself may not indicate poor prognosis, but it's a very landmark and important finding. And this classification is, I think, very useful, and we are getting a lot of reports which are highlighting using this classification. The another important findings, I think, which this group brought to our notice was tractional abnormalities that happen at foveola, and they have described 3 peculiar signs. One is cotton ball sign, where you get this hyper reflective ball-like appearance in these cases with VMT at the fovea, and then there can be a foveolar detachment, and sometimes a full-fledged vitelliform deposits can also occur. So these are all 3 very minor OCT findings at foveola, which again can help us. We are still not sure prognostic importance and relevance of these findings, but I'm sure they'll be taken up by more classifying systems. So that's it. Thank you, and I think we'll take in questions at the end. So over to you, Dr. Neha.